So good afternoon, it's the 28th of February, it's 3 o'clock on a Monday, and it's Joe and Mike back with their virtual tours. But we're back here in Dunblane, the cathedral city. It's small but perfectly made little cathedral city of Dunblane. If you were watching a few weeks ago, you would have seen Alastair here. We brought back Alastair, who's from the Leighton Library. We did a really great hour in the Leighton Library, courtesy of Alastair and his friends in there, and the feedback we got from that was so good, and we did say that we'd come back and do the town of Dunblane, taking a little cathedral tour, a tour of the town, and we'll take in the cathedral as well. So I want to say hello to Alastair.
Hello, hi.
So Alastair's a local here, and how long have you been in Dunblane?
I've moved here in 1999.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're well ensconced, and you know a lot about the history
Just
of the
a
town.
bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll keep the conversation going about things, but we want to just talk about, since the last time we were here. It was in November we were here.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And any developments you've had since then?
Yes. You'll remember we talked about having an appeal for the library, because if you have a look at it, particularly if you look at the stairway, you can see what's happening to the outside. So it's a very old building. It's 1687. Needs looking after. It's perfectly okay for the books inside, but we've got to do the outside. And we've had a very significant grant from the Pilgrim Trust. They gave us £30,000 recently. We need an awful lot. We need nearly £500,000 to do everything we'd like to do. We've got just over 160,000 at the moment, and if I can say so, we've a Just Giving page on our website, which we're very keen for people to help us out with. It's an absolute wonderful treasure, absolute gem.
We love it. So yeah, I will say any opportunity you have, you can put the cap out and just beg around there. Okay. And I understand the last time we were there, we had a guy who from the United States called Leighton, who was thinking of coming over as well. I thought it was a really interesting.
Yeah, interestingly, well, he there's no sign of him coming over, but I'm actually going there next month. And he's a bit overexcited that I'm coming to see him, so that's really good. I'm very pleased we'll be able to get together.
Well, that's how connections are made.
Amazing coincidence.
Yeah. And I'm also going to be in. You're going in March.
March, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be in New York in April. So if anybody in the New Yorkers online, especially from Poughkeepsie. We always mention Poughkeepsie. I'm going to be at the parade, all being well, the parade for the Scottish American week, or the Tartan week. So if you're available and want to come down and say hi, hello, I'll be on 6th Avenue with my kilt on. So come and see us. So let's start a wee tour here of Dunblane. So explain to where we are right now, Alastair.
Well, we're right in the middle of the town, and just to our right there is the old cross area, which was the marketplace and the centre of the medieval town. But I'd like to really mention where we are now in this garden. It's known as the Peace Garden, but it's a very interesting spot, right opposite our Leighton Library. But this was once the townhouse of Lord Strathallan, who was quite an extraordinary character. Mm-hmm. He was, I'll give you a bit of his history. So he was present at the beheading of Charles I. He was a Stuart supporter.
Okay.
So he fled to Holland, tried to come back, got to Yarmouth by ship, and then made his way back up to Edinburgh disguised as an old trader with an old horse and a cartload of cheese. Discovered that the restoration didn't look like it was going to happen at all, and went abroad again. Came back with Charles II, was captured at the Battle of Worcester, taken to Windsor where he was imprisoned, escaped again, went off to Paris, and then came back in the restoration. But in the meantime, waiting for the restoration, he went off to fight for the Tsar in the Muscovy army. Because he was he was a lieutenant colonel by that stage. He was made a general by the Tsar, along with bloody Tam Diel, who was his pal in the same army. And when he came back, he brought an interesting innovation to Scotland. He's said to have brought the first thumb screws back when he'd seen this useful bit of kit when he was in Europe.
They used to call them thumbikins.
Ah.
That's what they're called in Scotland. These new things were called the thumbikins. They sound quite attractive at the time. I'm just going to get the thumbikins out for you.
He didn't stand any nonsense.
Yeah.
Anyway, after the restoration, he was obviously a supporter of Charles II. Tam Diel died, and he became the head of the army in Scotland. He was at the Battle of Rullion Green, fighting against the Covenanters, who were dissenting against what Charles II was trying to do to the church.
Yeah.
I think he stuck up for the Covenanters and ended up himself being imprisoned in Dumbarton Castle for 2 years. No one's quite sure why, but we think it was because he just said the wrong thing in the wrong place. Got exonerated again, was very instrumental in helping supervise the building of our library over the way. He ended up being the keeper of Inverary Castle and dying in 1688. So there's a life for you.
There's a full life going from back and forward to the continent, being Charles I, being at some entertainment, the execution of Charles I. That's what they had for entertainment in the 17th century, and then coming back with Charles II and watching the retribution that went on, or the revenge that went on against the Covenanters.
Well,
with the
very turbulent times, as we know from our
as we
history
know
of the
from here,
library.
yeah.
That's
And
right.
if you want to hear about turbulent times, then you can go back and see our video on YouTube on the Leighton Library. It's really worth it if you haven't seen it. The stories that of Bishop Leighton himself and the turbulent period that was going through with Oliver Cromwell and the rebellion against the Stuarts, etc., and the glorious revolution afterwards. It's well worth having a look at it. Let's go for a wee walk, shall we?
One quick story. This subsequently, after Lord Strathallan's house, became the local jail. Right. And I found this great report in 1837 where they did a prison inspection of the jail. And they found, it had no heating, there was no glass in the windows, and the report said that the jailer was infirm, elderly, and enveloped in grime. And it was very easy for the prisoners to escape.
I can just see the old fella just lying in a corner, enveloped in grime. Now, just like explain Strathallan, because this area is Strathallan. The river that goes through Dunblane is called the Allan Water, and the Strath is a Scottish word for a wide, fertile valley, as opposed to a glen, which is narrower and less fertile. So we've got two words for different valleys here. The straths, which you get mainly on the east coast of Scotland, and then just in general, but you have more of the glens more on the west coast. Just a geological point there. So let's go across, shall we? Do you want to walk up? Would you tell us we go up this way too?
Yeah. Balhaddy House. Yeah. So this, well, I think we're going to jump a bit in history.
Yep.
And we're going to look at the 1745 Jacobite rebellion. Both Bonnie Prince Charlie and the man who beat him, the Duke of Cumberland, came through the town. And in fact, where we are now was the site of an assassination attempt on the Duke of Cumberland. So a serving girl from a house that we're going to see in a minute leant out of a two-storey window just round the corner here with a pot of boiling oil and poured it on the Duke of Cumberland, who was on his horse below. It missed the Duke, but it got the backside of the horse that chucked him off and hit him on the ground. Then there was a huge hue and cry. The Duke was unhurt, apart from slightly undignified. And there's an underground stream that goes from just under the co-op up here, all the way down that way to the Allan Water. And she's said to have escaped through the underground culvert, and that she never got caught. She later married a farmer and lived happily ever after.
And she was a local hero.
And yes, and an admirer of Bonnie Prince Charlie, because he spent the night up here around the corner. So we'll go and see the house where
it's lovely.
Where he stayed. He only came for one night, and that was on his way south. Of course, he only got as far as Derby and then turned back. When he came back, things weren't going quite so well. And in February 1746, a couple of months before Culloden, he bypassed Dunblane, and I think he spent the night in Doon. But the Duke of Cumberland did stay here, and he stayed in a house that's now been demolished. And he celebrated. What happened was that the town was a bit divided. Half the town were Jacobites, and the other half probably supported the Hanoverians.
Which was quite common.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
I think there was a mix. It wasn't all one way. We were right on the edge of the Highlanders area, so the townspeople were said to have had a lot of bother from pilfering Highlanders, but also were equally scared of the Hanoverian army coming their way. You don't really want an army coming into your town. And so the bailey, who would be the equivalent of the mayor, and the minister gathered all the townspeople in the square and advised them to keep their own counsel and not offer too many opinions. When the
So keep your own
Hanoverian army
counsel,
was,
and in Scots would be "Hod your wheesht."
Absolutely, yes. So they went out and they met Duke of Cumberland on the Stirling Road, gave him a formal welcome, and he spent one night here. Following day, and then the army was going north. Following day, his army left, but he had a bit of stuff to do. A local tailor pinched a cheese from his baggage train, so the Duke wanted to hang him from the bridge, but the local bailey intervened and saved him. But there were two other men, McNiven and Brown, who were also caught pinching from the Hanoverian baggage train. And McNiven was hanged from the bridge because he was called Mac. But Brown was spared because there were quite a lot of Browns in the Hanoverian army and he didn't want to have any trouble with his
So
troops.
if you were a Mac in those days, you were identified as probably being a Jacobite supporter anyway. So
the story goes.
yeah. Now I'm very interested. We're going to see the big cathedral, but we'll also just pass the church of St. Blaine. We'll see it on the way back down again.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to mention about St. Blaine. So he was a Celtic missionary. So he was Scottish born, and he went over to learn or be taught in Ireland, I believe, and came back here as a missionary. And as far as the records go, there's no real agreement on when he died. So some say it was in the 500s, some say it's the 600s. But he's renowned for two miracles. I've checked out with the Catholic, the Aberdeen Breviary. There's two miracles. One was he raised a young boy from the dead, which is
That's not bad.
it's not a bad feat. And he was also had this other skill of being able to light a fire with thunderbolts from his fingers.
Oh, superhero. Yes. Oh, wow.
No, I mean, come on, that you deserve a sainthood after that.
Right. Well, here we are at Balhaddy House, which I think is probably looking rather similar to what it was at the time. And this is the place where Bonnie Prince Charlie spent the night, I think in September 1945. Yeah, 11th of September. Sorry, 1745, on his way to Preston Pans, where of course he had a great victory.
Yeah.
But things got worse after that.
And for our viewers who don't know, Preston Pans is just south of Edinburgh, and this is where it was a great victory over the Cope's army, and that was part of the advance. So they captured Edinburgh, and they took the castle, and they were able to then advance further south.
And of course that's the great song Hey Johnny Cope, isn't it?
Hey Johnny Cope, are you walking yet?
Yeah. Well, this is the townhouse of the Drummonds. They were a very prominent family around here. In fact, Lord Strathallan was a Drummond himself. He was a William Drummond. And the old chap who lived here was a very high-profile Jacobite. He apparently fought at the Battle of Killiecrankie and was involved in...
That was in
1689.
1689, yeah.
And he was involved in an abortive attempt to capture Edinburgh Castle in 1715, which was the second Jacobite rebellion. So, and amazingly, and he even called his daughter Jacobina.
But Jacobina.
For some reason no one quite understands, he was never imprisoned or punished for it, so I don't know how he managed to do that. But this is where he stayed, and it was a servant girl from this household who did the assassination attempt with the oil round the corner in the cross.
No, yeah, the Drummonds are quite a big family in this area of sort of. I used to be a part of Perthshire and Stirlingshire here, because we did another video up at Inner Peffray Library, and it was the Drummond family who were instrumental in establishing the Inner Peffray Library with the books that were originally.
I think the chap who established Inner Peffray was the brother of William Drummond at Strathallan. I could be wrong, but I think that's the case.
So quite an
Quite a
influential
close,
family.
or at least a cousin, very closely connected.
Yep. We've got a question, where is Mike?
He's got a very long arm.
Mike is behind the camera. He is with us today, but you'll get to see him at the end. We'll let him out and you have a wee view. Yeah. Yeah. There's a good view of the gardens here as well. Have a wee look at the gardens. And you can get a good view of the house from this perspective as well. Yeah, so this part of Scotland was involved in a lot. I mean, if you controlled Stirling and its surrounding areas, you controlled the whole of the country. So this whole area was just one big battlefield, century after century, even going back to, Bruce and Wallace, and then all the way through history. If you captured the Stirling area, including just a little bit north here, because we're only about 3 miles from Stirling itself.
A bit further, yeah.
Yeah, so we're very close to Stirling, and if you captured that area, then you captured the whole central belt of Scotland.
Well, also there were very few places where you could cross the rivers, so you had to cross the Allan Water here, and of course you could only really cross the Forth at Stirling, so very strategic. Plus we're on the fringes of the Highlands here, so it's and this of course was the Great Road North, so we're going to be walking up a bit of track which was probably walked on by the Roman army, possibly William the Conqueror, certainly the Butcher Cumberland, and Bonnie Prince Charlie the other way. So it was the Great Road North, yes.
It's absolutely steeped in history, and also we're just nestled at the ends or the foothills of the Ochil Hills as well.
That's right, yes, they're just over there.
Yep.
And then Trossach's just to the north of us.
And we get to Trossachs and over to the Highlands. So we're just at we used to call Stirling at one point the gateway to the Highlands. And then I think Perth was known as the capital of the Highlands.
I think it's something like 9 major battles in Scottish history around the Stirling area.
Yeah.
Something extraordinary. Yeah.
And I think my family were involved in them all.
Still are.
And still are.
Yes.
Could form a battle in an empty house, my family.
Right.
So
this is St Blaine's. Then.
this is St Blaine's church here, and it's interesting. We've got the big cathedral and we've got St Blaine's. And we've talked about before in some of our broadcasts about the great disruption that took place in the 19th century, so in the 1800s, when the Church of Scotland split to form the Free Church. And this is because of the involvement of the nobles or the aristocracy who wanted to nominate their ministers. And the people rose against this and did not want the ministers to be nominated. They wanted them to be elected, because that's the way the Scottish Church was. There's nobody above you, everybody's equal, there's nobody between you and your God. That caused the great disruption and the church split.
I think it nearly sank the Act of Union as well,
Yeah.
just because there was a huge row in the early 1700s on that very issue, wasn't there?
Yep. And it's the history of religion is woven into the history of Scotland, without a doubt. So you do see in a lot of towns, small towns in Scotland, they are over-churched. And this is where congregations can't support them, and so we repurpose our churches into other things as well. So,
Well, this one's still a very active church,
and it's only
as is the cathedral.
Yeah.
Yes, and 200 yards apart.
200 yards, a couple of hundred metres apart. But I love this little area here where there's the architecture.
This is Sinclair Street.
Sinclair Street, yeah.
Yeah, and actually on the corner here, this is the old original Great Road North. And as you turn to the right, it becomes Brayport, which means the town gate on the Bray, the town on the hill, the gate on the hill.
And Bray is a great Scottish word for hill. But it is a lovely historic town, and I was saying to you, Alastair, when I was a kid, we didn't have a swimming pool in our own time, so we used to come up to Dunblane.
Yeah.
The big hotel here they opened up the swimming pool at weekends for all the local kids, and there was just busloads of kids all coming up here with their money, and you had enough money for a bag of chips on the way back.
It's quite an expensive health club now.
Yep. And I always remember when I was a kid, you come down from this. They didn't have anything like hair dryers in the swimming pool, and you come down here, and by the time you got to catch your bus down here and had your bag of chips, your hair would be frozen and sticking up.
Can you actually, while we're here, can you see that pub is called the Tappet Hen? And interestingly, that's a picture of a tappet hen on the inn sign, although it's kind of got caught behind the drain pipe. So it's a sort of 2-pint liquid measure, which is known traditionally in Scots as the Tappet Hen.
Yep. So it's a quart.
I think it's a quart measure, yeah. I don't know, because it looks like a hen.
And that's a good thing about Dunblane as well. When you come walking around here, there are lots of facilities available, lots of nice cafes, and a lovely walk around the village itself. But this is a great view here of the cathedral itself. It's stunning. So it's not always looked like this, shall we say?
No, it hasn't. Interestingly, I've got a picture here. I don't know if, Mike, you can get a shot of that. But this is an engraving from the 1690s of what the place looked like.
And you can see it's all fallen in here.
Essentially, looking there was only a roof on the choir end of it until 1893.
So here, yeah.
And after the Reformation, because it was originally a Catholic cathedral, and it would have been full of individual saints' chapels and all the rest of it. That obviously wasn't needed after the Reformation, so they all just used one end of it, and by 1600 the roof fell in. It's also said that the army of Edward II nicked the lead off the roof to fire it either in or out of Stirling Castle. I'm not sure whether they held it or were besieging it at the time. I think they were holding it, actually. Yes, it was largely a ruin, and you can see the Bishop's Palace here on the left-hand side of the picture, and we'll go and have a look at that in a minute. But this is how it was at least 200 years, and certainly now when you go inside the main bit of the cathedral, the water has weathered the stone really beautifully because it's sandstone, it's very soft, and it makes that yellow golden sandstone lovely soft colour. It's beautiful to look at and sit inside the cathedral.
Nice,
yes,
yeah, yellow colour here,
so,
golden colour. The tower itself, but there has been a cathedral on this site going back to the 1100s.
Yes, we think probably even earlier. If you look at the tower, you can see it's different colours. So the bottom bit, which might come out as dark red or brown, is Romanesque, and that's the original. It's one of the oldest bits of building in Scotland, and that could be even 11th century. No one's entirely sure. It's got no windows at the bottom, so the thinking is that it was part of a religious settlement, and if the Vikings came or whoever else it was causing you trouble, you could shoot inside, shut the door, and there were no windows they could get at you from. And then it's been added to later. Mostly, I think the building was done in the 1200s by Bishop Clement.
Okay.
And then 1893, a very generous lady from Glassinghall, which was a few miles just out that way, a big country estate, which was said to be the inspiration for the House of Shaws in Robert Louis Stevenson's Kidnap.
Yeah. But I have to say,
she restored it. She paid for the restoration.
Yeah, and it's looking gorgeous now. And I have to say, when you're walking down here on a dark evening and the lights are on inside, those windows are quite spectacular.
Yeah. There's even one with Scott of the Antarctic on it.
Yeah.
Because some of the restoration for the stained glass was done at the time of the Great Scots expedition, so he somehow got himself in the stained glass.
We've got a lovely arch going in here as well.
What's the meaning of
Rickerton's in style.
I don't know who Rickerton was.
Yeah.
Well, Rickerton is also the campus for Heriot-Watt University.
Right.
Yeah, so
Who Rickerton's about.
Yeah. So we'll take a walk through the cemetery itself, because there's some interesting views we're going to get on the other side. We'll take a walk around and we'll come back to.
Have a look here. So you can see all this fencing. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the gravestones are unstable. So we've just been told, if you can see the ones with string around them, they're wobbly and don't go near them, because they could be very nasty if they fall on you. So I think it's pending restoration, but certainly it's keep out for the public. And you'll notice in this corner of the kirkyard, although the wall goes around, there aren't any gravestones at all here. So local legend has it this was a plague pit. So you can believe that or not, depending on how you want to take it. There was a plague here in 1647, and which I think was probably not uncommon in the rest of Scotland. And then in the 1650s, there was interestingly a horse plague in Dunblane, and all the horses started dropping down. And I've read that apparently they were very perplexed. They didn't know what the cause of this plague was, but surmised it might have been the sins of the local community. So they all had a day of atonement for the horse plague.
Let's throw a couple of witches on the fire. Let's round up a few of the old ladies and call them witches, and we'll atone ourselves, because it must have been brought on by them, I'm sure. But you can see the strings on these things here, and in Edinburgh what they've done, and people think it's the Vandals who've done it, but they've not. They've actually pushed the stones over so that people can still walk in the cemeteries without fear of being damaged. Because there was an accident in Glasgow about 3 years ago, where a young chap, a young kid died when playing in the cemetery, and the stone fell on him.
You remarked on the lichen on the tree there.
Yeah,
it's quite striking, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got a piece of the tree here. And I don't know if Mike can pick up the lichen. It's almost like Spanish moss. You can probably see it better if you close up there.
It is.
It's like Spanish moss.
Come back a wee bit 'cause it's out of focus.
Yeah. And for a biologist, you would refer to this almost like the canary in the coal mine, because the air is so pure, but it's got to be really pure for this lichen to grow.
Good sign.
It's a really good sign of healthy, clean airs, and it. I should say we're up in Stirling and near the Highlands, and the air is quite pure
it's
here.
usually nice and breezy here.
Yeah. Well, we're in a sort of gap between the two sections of hills, and
Dunblane itself is quite high.
Yeah.
So, and I live at the top of this hill, and it's generally, if you compare it to Edinburgh, it's 2 or 3 degrees colder most days. Yeah.
And when I was in high school, we used to play rugby, and you always played rugby in winter time. And our playing fields were right in a gap between these two hills, and it used to be a wind chill factor would be about -10.
Well, but it's made a man of you. Come on.
Yeah. You can see when that ball came with me, and you had 20 children chasing you with a ball. I got rid of that ball as quick as you could. I like watching rugby. I don't like playing rugby.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But this is a great view of the whole cathedral here, and you can see the to the left hand part here, which was still used as a church, whereas the right-hand part was left in ruin. But look at the amount of work that went in.
When it came to restoration in Victorian times, of course, the great art lover John Ruskin was a huge admirer of Dunblane Cathedral. And I've got another picture here, actually, Mike, which Turner came to, the artist J.M.W. Turner came and sketched the cathedral.
This will tickle Mike. Mike's the artist.
Right, now I'll try and do this in it's a bit more of that Dunblane breeze. So here's one of 1816. Here's one of Turner's drawings of Dunblane Abbey. So it was a very romantic ruin, and it did attract artists and aesthetes. And Ruskin strongly opposed restoring the cathedral. He said that it was a beautiful ruin, and he wanted to keep the romantic notion. And he would rather see a railway line run through the ruins than have it restored unsympathetically. Well, it was restored, and the railway line's a bit further over there. And you can see a train now.
And Ruskin didn't get his way then.
No, he didn't. No,
but Ruskin himself has an interesting story with Effie. What was her name, Mike? Effie Gray. There's a really good film about Ruskin and Effie Gray, which is worth watching. There's a bit of a scandal with Ruskin there. And as you can see, there is a train over in the station there, so it is on the main line.
That's the line north.
Yeah, up to Perth and we got
Aberdeen, Inverness.
Yep. And
so in fact, you can probably hear the Allen Water below us now. We're quite high up above the water. We'll see it.
We'll get a good view of the river at the moment. There's been quite a few days of heavy rain here in Scotland.
And if you look at old sheet music and old pictures, it's often spelt Dunblane, A-I-N, D-U-M, D-U-M-A-N-E. I mean, there was no standard spelling in the 18th century.
Yeah, and you've also got it's taken from Blaine is a translation, as an anglicisation of a Gaelic name, and Dun, when you see the prefix, it means a Celtic or a Pictish fort, not a Celtic before the Celts, a Pictish fort. So Dun prefix means a hill fort for the Picts. Yeah. And also Dun and Dum, so you get Dumbarton, but it's the same prefix.
It's Dunbartonshire, isn't it?
Yeah,
confusingly.
Exactly. Yeah. Very confusing. And this is beautiful, though. You talked about the weathering of the stone here. Have a look at the close-up to this. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, the stone's very soft. And it can be a bit of a problem with erosion. But here, it's not looking too bad, but it's quite clearly seen the ravages of time, hasn't it?
Now, Alastair, you told me before that you got married here.
Yeah, I did, actually. And we've got some lovely wedding photos just standing in this doorway. They're beautiful, yeah.
And you've got the sound of the Allen Water just behind us here, which is a bit in spate at the moment.
It's a beautiful place to get married, I'll tell you that. Yes.
And if you have a look at the windows here are absolutely spectacular. Now, inside, we did ask permission to film inside, but unfortunately Historic and Environmental Scotland didn't give us permission to film inside. If we can get inside, we will get inside, but we had to apply. We have to go through all these hoops with health and safety. We had to have £5 million insurance on us, and they wanted a £300 upfront payment charge. And we ain't got £300 at the moment to give to anybody. So sorry, Historic Environmental Scotland, you've missed out, because we could have taken in there. But I will say, when you go in there, there's a famous artist from this area. She's known as one of the Glasgow girls. You often hear about the Glasgow boys, but not much is said about the Glasgow girls. Her name is Helen Lamb, and she's got a lot of art in here. And I do believe that some art of hers was stolen at one point as well.
Really? Yeah. There's a couple of fantastic Pictish stones inside the cathedral as well, which I think were dug up in the kirkyard in the 19th century. Yeah. They're really worth seeing.
Yeah, and it is worthwhile. So when you come here, it is open to the public, although we can't film inside it. It is open to the public, and they can take groups in here if you come in a group and you want to have a walk. But I like to see here that nearly every building tells a story here. And I don't know if Mike can pick it out here, but you can see all the little pock marks here. This is from gunshot. Musket balls here. So you can see that has been involved in the wars, as they say. Now, whether or not it was through the Jacobite rebellion, or whether it was Butcher Cumberland coming up with the Hanoverians, or whether it was Oliver Cromwell, we can't really tell.
Well, on the gable end, at the other end, there is a cross right at the very top of the roof. and one of the arms of the cross is missing, and local legend has it that was a pot-shot target practice in the 45.
Oh, the Jacobites.
Yes.
Fighting against themselves again. So we're just going to get a good view now of the tower itself, because this is the oldest part of the cathedral. And as you mentioned, Alastair, the bottom 4 layers, you can see it's architecturally
It's a
different.
quite clearly, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
And these towers were built by the Roman Catholics, so they were called the Culdees.
Yeah.
So the Culdees were pre-Romanization they were more of the Pictish side, or Irish Scottish. And the Culdees existed as they were a form of Catholicism, because that was the only form of Catholicism we had. It wasn't until Queen Margaret comes into the scene, and she Romanizes the whole church. And she starts asking for pilgrimage rights to various places, and it's through Queen Margaret that we get the Cathedral in St Andrews. So St Andrews became one of the most important pilgrimage routes, and so the Culdees were kind of sidelined, and the Romanization took place. But it's great to see these towers. There's another Culdee tower up in a wee town called Muthal,
Oh yeah, not far from here.
not far from here. So the Culdees were covered this area right across to the east, to St Andrews.
Inside the cathedral, if anybody ever goes to visit, right up at the top end of the choir, there are 3 graves of young women, all Drummonds, in the floor. And the middle one is said to have been the secret wife of James IV, who is allegedly have been poisoned because she was an inconvenience in the way of, I think, the plans of Henry VIII or something like that. But anyway, the 3 sisters are all buried up there, and one of them, the secret queen, is said to have been poisoned.
Right. Okay. I remember the 3 flagstones on the
That's
floor.
it, yes,
Yeah.
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 Quite a sad little tale, really.
Yeah. Weren't they all poisoned in the end? I think that's the story.
Maybe, well, presumably if they all had the same meal, then
Yeah.
could have been.
Yeah.
I think they're all about the same age when they died. Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you were in the know, they wanted to get rid of you, didn't they? They
You
were.
don't want the witnesses, do you?
Yeah, I know.
So, so this is quite an interesting grave, and a bit unusual, really, for Dunblane.
So shall I just read it out? It says, "In the memory of William McGowan," and it looks like C-58 Massachusetts infantry, who died in Camp Redville, the United States of America, in defense of the Union against the rebellion, April 1864, and he was 47 years old. So he would got a connection to the Civil War of the United States.
And I'm looking down here. I'm assuming that's his son Daniel, from Fall River, who came to Dunblane in 1871, November and December, and presumably came for the establishment of the memorial.
And so he came over in November, and then he went back in December. So he just come over for a short period.
Just a month, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't know anything about connections with the Civil War and Dunblane otherwise.
And this is a weaver's shuttle.
Oh yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was obviously come from because Dunblane was a famous weaving town, or mill town, and so you can see the little story here telling us that he obviously had weaving skills. Can you see that, Mike? There, that's the shuttle for the.
Yeah.
So a connection to.
Well spotted.
Yep.
Yeah.
Connection to the Civil War in the United States. Because a lot of Scots did go over and fight in the Civil War, and even prior to that, they fought in the War of Independence. There's a few Scots who've actually are signatories.
Well, and of course, I think Davy Crockett was originally Scots, wasn't he? Yes, so, or his family was. Yes.
So we just did a little circle. We can pick up some of
That's
the.
the Dean's house there, a bit older than the Leighton Library. It's early 1600s. Dean Patterson, not necessarily the Dean of the Cathedral. We're not really sure. And it's been altered in the upper stories, but essentially there's a wonderful museum in there, really worth going to see, and it's been beautifully modernised out the back. And we're hoping to have an exhibition in May of an American atlas from 1776, which is quite a rare thing. So we're putting on an exhibition there.
Okay.
So anybody interested in particularly at the time of US around the the War of Independence, we've got a wealth of stuff, and we're putting out some pretty rare maps. So come and see us. That'll be in May in the museum.
And how long will it be on for?
The whole month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. And it is a lovely. Again, it's that Scottish architecture with the wash on it as well, the lime wash.
That's the lime wash, which of course breathes, and that's a problem we have in the library, that ours is a later concrete cement that doesn't breathe.
Yeah.
So we need to move to that. Not necessarily the same colour. The colour, it's a bit of a myth that they all had to be orange. You know, I think lime wash came in different shades.
Yeah, all the distilleries are white.
Yes.
You get ochre, the colour. You get the pinkish. You get yellow.
It looks attractive.
Yeah. It's whatever materials you had available at the time.
You have to redo it. Can you see? I mean, it's not that long since they've done it, a few years, but you have to refresh it. You can't just leave it for several years.
I've just had to do the harling in my own house.
You've got to paint your house. Yeah. Should we go and look at the Bishop's
Oh, we're
Palace?
going to have a look at the palace now. Yeah, yeah. I've just finished doing the harling in my own house, so I know what that means. And then we've got the church hall here, which is Victorian, which still belongs to the church or the cathedral itself as well.
Yeah.
Lovely little walks around this town.
It's a very beautiful centre and quite touristy now. We've got quite a few good places where you can get a nice lunch. And we're on the train line, on the main train line, as well as handy for the motorway. So there's a lot in terms of tourist logistics that really mean Dunblane's on the up.
And also being close to Stirling, you've got the university, so a lot of the professors live up this area
That's
too.
right, yes they do. And we in the library have quite a lot of connections with the Stirling University Library, one of whose librarians is our honorary librarian in the Leighton.
Yep.
So here's the Bishop's Palace.
Now, there'd be no need for a palace after the Reformation, so a lot of things would have fallen into disrepair.
Well, I think I've read that by about the 1570s this was a ruin. So it was abandoned fairly early on. The sign says probably 13th century. Certainly our Bishop Leighton, who died in 1684, his family suggested that the library could be built with a few stones repurposed from here.
That's so Scottish.
And I think they repurposed the new jail, or the old jail, on Lord Strathallan's spot in the Peace Garden there. I think quite a bit of the building got repurposed as well.
We've got our new friend
Oh,
joined
that-
us. Hello there. Hello, buddy. Hello. What's the dog's name?
Daisy.
Daisy. Hello, Daisy. She's a scene stealer. Oh, here we got another one coming along.
Yeah. So that's all that's left now, really.
And I think what's really good about this, and involving the local kids as well, is that they were involved in actually doing the signature board here.
That's right. Yeah.
I love these dogs. They're great. Hello, little girlie. Hello. Hello. Dogs always come to us when we're on camera. Cheers.
Right. So there we are. That's it. And on the other side was the town bleaching green, which is essentially an area of lawn which was the public drying green, and that was originally the Bishop's Palace garden, just where those trees are down to the river. But it was given to the people of Dunblane in the 19th century as a public green to dry your washing.
Oh, that was
There's
always
none there today, I've noticed.
always very popular. There's always somewhere to dry your smalls in the towns around
Well,
Scotland.
I suppose, especially if you didn't have a garden or you lived up in a tenement.
It's very true that, and people did need the public spaces.
Yes.
And just a wee filler, I mentioned before that Mike and I are now getting real jobs. I just finished a real job, just explaining sort of the varied things that Mike and I get involved in. I was looking after about 170 Norwegian football supporters recently, because they came over from Norway to play against Glasgow Celtic, and there were 4 of us who were taken on to escort them. What a 4 days that was! I mean, so I don't think.
You earned your money then, did you?
They were really nice, but you know how things are so expensive in Norway. So when they come here, I don't think there was. Sobriety did not come into it, shall we say. So we've got 170 Norwegians, and they won. So they had a very positive frame of mind, shall we say. So they're celebrating a lot. But that's a varied work.
Do you want to have a look in the library undercroft?
I think we should. We go back in here, because we weren't able to go into undercroft the last time we were here. But it's nice to go in, and so people will be reminded about the library itself, the historical significance of the library, the books, the national treasures that are inside it as well, and what you're doing with the building itself.
Part of our plans is we're opening up the ground floor, because as you can see, you can only get in up the steps, so that denies access to quite a lot of people.
So here's the man with the keys.
The keeper of the keys.
Keeper of the keys.
It's worth a look. There's a wonderful original vaulted cellar here, and we're going to open that up into a reception area, information exhibition area, community space, storytelling. You'll see when you get inside, there's a lot of potential. It's very atmospheric.
And
it was originally the home of the first librarian.
And
So go in.
yep, and hopefully the signal will continue here. But to be able to walk into a building that goes back to when?
Finished in 1687. Started in about 1685 to 87. Yeah, so 330 plus years old.
And it's got a original vaulted ceiling.
Yeah.
Made of stone. So this will be local.
Yes.
Stone.
Yeah. And it's of course, unfortunately, it's been pointed with cement mortar. Again, we've got a conservation issue with that, which we'll have to think about. And various old. I don't know if you can come down here, but there was another doorway here that's been bricked up. And fireplaces. There was an old thunderbox toilet, apparently, in the corner.
Thunderbox, I love that.
And some windows. So it would have been, for a short-term lodging, but it's also even been an air raid shelter. So this was the air raid shelter for the minister of the Cathedral during the Second World War.
He had one to himself.
He did. Unfortunately, the Nazis didn't bother with bombing Dunblane.
Although I think they've got Stirling a little bit, but they're not much.
Yes, I'm not sure if anybody landed here, but certainly this was technically the air raid shelter, but it's also been a store, and it's frankly had a lot of junk in it. But we're going to renovate it, get some audio visuals in here, and make it a really wonderful reception area.
But I'm glad your appeal is going well there. It's
Yeah, well, we've a long way to go, but we're starting to get traction, and I think that's the thing. And once people see that you're getting somewhere, they'll join in.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we'll just get the bandwagon rolling on.
Well, I will. We'll keep forwarding it when I go over to the States, and I'll mention to people to come up
Please
to
do.
Dunblane and
Yes.
as well.
We're always very pleased to do them, and we'll also do private tours for groups. You know, you don't have to wait till we're open in the summer. If you get in touch on the website, we'll do tours for interest groups and small parties and things anytime.
Okay, and we did post the video on Scottish Tour Guides Association as well, so hopefully a few other people.
Yeah, no, we've had very good publicity so far.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things to finish off with then. I really like this, which was, this was the bank manager's house. So 1835, but occupied by Charles Macara, who put gloves on his head to hide his baldness. I've never seen that before, and I'm not entirely persuaded how effective that is, but it's different, isn't it? Yeah, well, we'll try that.
Didn't people just wear wigs?
Yes. Well, maybe he was saving on that. Yeah.
And we'll finish off with a local connection, because this is where we started. This is where we started our last one here. So there's a photo opportunity here for this box.
This is it, and if you look at the plaque on the side, that tells you what the story is.
Go around here. So I
this
think
is celebrating Andy Murray winning the gold medal in the 2012 men's singles tennis at the Olympics. So his family comes from here. He grew up in Dunblane.
Yep.
And his grandfather's optician's business is still going strong at the other end of the high street.
And he's also got a hotel near here too.
That's right, yes, at Cromwell's. Yeah.
He got married at there too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
So yeah, the Cromwell's Hotel. I would highly recommend it.
So anyways, you obviously heard I'd got married there and thought you'd catch on. Yeah.
Well, Alastair, I want to say thank you very much for giving us your time again and taking us around, because it's a wonderful little. I mean, it's a small town. It's punches way above its weight in terms of its history. It's a gorgeous town to walk around, and I always think that when people do come to Central Scotland, they've got it in their head, they want to go to Stirling, and they want to go to Bannockburn, they want to go to the Wallace Monument. I always try and include a wee thing in Dunblane, because I think it's a lovely place to walk around, because we've only really covered a small part of it. There are other historic areas.
There's plenty more to see, and good places to have lunch as well, so it makes a really good day out.
And so you're going and through history, so you got the Romans going up through the North Road here, you got the Jacobites, you got the Charles I, Charles II, you got the Covenanters, the whole history.
We've even got one of Queen Victoria's horseshoes down near the station. She was coming through, and the horse chucked a shoe from her carriage, and they stuck it up on the wall. You can still see it.
And well, and it's also famous for the Romantics, for Ruskin, who will come up here as well. And I think there's a new series starting on BBC quite soon about the Romantics.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah.
I'll look forward to that as well. So I want to say thank you very much indeed. And it's been great going around here. And thank our viewers who've been sticking with us. I hope you enjoyed the little tour.